Welcome to the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. I'm your host, Jacob Cooper, best-selling author of Life After Breath and the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. For those of you who are new to my channel, please consider following us on YouTube and hitting that subscribe button to stay up to date to interviews coming your way. You could also find the audio syndicated podcast on mindbodyspirit.fm so that you could be in your cars or on your walks and stay up to date to our, powerful conversations that we have. Today's guest in the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder is Gordon Smith. Gordon has been hailed as the UK's most accurate medium, is an author of over 20 books, and has been practicing mediumship and spiritual teaching for over 4 decades. So we're honored to welcome the renowned, incredible, and brilliant Gordon Smith here on the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder to share his profound insight and guidance for everyday life, as well as discussing the spirit realm and how it could relate to this realm. So without further ado, we bring on Gordon Smith on the Wisdom Jacob's Ladder. Gordon Smith, it is my distinct honor to have you here as my guest in the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder.
It's an absolute pleasure to reconnect with you once again, Jacob. It was a pleasure meeting you in Arizona earlier this year.
Yeah, I loved every moment of that. And for viewers who aren't sure, to specify, Gordon Smith and I met at the Helping Parents Heal, conference. We had over 1,200 Shining Light parents, and Gordon was one of the keynotes, and I was one of the presenters there. And it was just such an honor to be there with you, but most importantly, to see just some of the transformation that came in front of our eyes.
Yeah.
As Elizabeth would say, people might have came out in the beginning maybe a little bit bitter, but they came out better from that conference.
Absolutely.
I have no question. Just an honor. But, I know, a lot of people do know you, but this is a time to take a closer look.
Sure.
Certainly you're hailed as the UK or Great Britain. It's kind of like the other side in heaven. I guess it doesn't matter what you call it. This kind of describes the same thing, but you're hailed as the most accurate, medium, by many reputable sources in Great Britain. But what I saw from you was a profound teacher and someone who had a magnetizing joy, authenticity, just multifaceted talent, and just people seem to gravitate to that light spirit that you evoked, which, that to me is what drew me into you and what wanted to have me, in on your podcast. But for those who, maybe haven't heard of, Gordon Smith, and the work that you do, could you take us through how you came into being? Because a lot of people will see, things from a surface level, but I'm sure beyond that, you've written over 20 books and you're one of the most accurate mediums in the world. But, before that, what was life like for you? To scale it back, this is kind of like our therapy session here without a co-payment or charge. But I just wanted to hear, because a lot of people put mediums on pedestals and not see themselves in that person. I think it's important to humanize, the medium, that they're not just these robots and they're very human too.
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, I don't see myself as a medium being any more special than anyone else. I think I was just as special as a hairdresser when I had my day job. I don't get all puffed up with some kind of spiritual pride. I have a gift that when it works is very healing for people. Who I am is not that important. What I can do for people sometimes is very important. So, I mean, I'm very grounded, and I think it's because when I began my journey as a medium, I was a hairdresser. I had a day job, and I never gave up my day job. And I never became a professional medium. I didn't want to charge money for my gift. I still don't. I do all my readings for nothing. And I only read for people who have had a loss. I'm not a fortune teller or a psychic. I can be psychic, but My mainstay is to help people who have lost, and usually with helping parents heal in other groups that I've worked with through my lifetime.
Mm,
I've brought healing to tens of thousands of homes through
mm,
letting the mediumship do the talking for me. As a human being, I am blessed to be very happy. One of the practices I've done for most of my adult life is Tibetan Buddhism, and I found a joy in that. And again, there's a humility within Buddhism that to be praised is not a great thing. So,
mm,
you turn up at something like last 2 weeks ago, I was in Switzerland where we had 11,000 people in the audience,
uh,
and everybody's saying, oh, how wonderful you are. So, well, actually, the Buddhist nature in you thinks, don't say that. I'm just down to earth and being normal. And when I stand on a stage and stuff comes through me, it does change people's lives. And I know that it does that, but you're still going to be grounded in reality.
mm.
Mediumship is a moment in my life. That's all. It's only a moment. The rest of my life is happy and joyous.
Wow. Yeah, and I definitely saw, a lot of Buddhist references within your talks, and obviously you have the Buddha behind you.
Yeah.
That's so important because, yes, now mediums are getting respected. I think people are recognizing the real work that you're doing and the impactful work, but there's also a fame that comes with many mediums, and it's so great that you're leading that example by staying grounded and staying true, in your foundation. But for you, like, when did you start to begin to notice maybe you were a little bit, shall we say, different or picking up on different things? Because I mean, I love getting haircuts. For me, that's therapy. And a lot of barbers, I
Yeah,
have better sessions with them than I do some of my own therapists
absolutely.
that I've had. Was it happening to you like when you were when you're, styling people's hair? Was it as a child? Like, when did you know, like, wow,
But
I have a little thing going, different than the next person?
well, Jacob, one of the things that happened to me as a child, I had a full materialization of a spirit who appeared to me when I was 7 years old. And I didn't see this man as being dead or a spirit. He was just a man. He was
Mm,
a friend of my mum and dad's, and I was very comfortable.
mm,
And now when I look back at that moment, I was probably, even as a child, in some kind of altered state. Because
mm,
I remember being almost rooted to the ground, but no fear. But it's as though I was held there in the man's energy or aura or whatever. And he passed a little message to me and he was singing. He seemed really happy. And I then felt that I could move. I ran indoors to tell my mum. I was very excited that I'd saw this man and he sung this song. And my mother dropped the knife she was holding. She was peeling potatoes and she dropped it and she was shocked
oh my God.
because they had buried that man. My mum and dad paid for his funeral and they didn't have a lot of money. So they put
Mm,
him into this part of the graveyard, which was all they could afford. And it
mm,
was like a pauper's grave. So they were
mm,
actually quite humiliated that that was all they could afford. And they were, my mum was very worried that, oh my God, you know, that's what we did. And the man actually was singing a song to me saying he was happy in Dalbeth. I had no idea what that was, but that was the name of the pauper's graveyard in Glasgow. And he was
mm,
happy there. So his message was a happy message. So that was probably the first time that happened.
mm,
But when I cut people's hairs, I think twice in my entire life did I actually react. Once
mm,
I just happened to say a man's name when he was crying. He said, I've just lost my dad. And as he was leaving, I said to him, Raymond, your dad's fine. Your dad's, and he looked at me and he said, how do you know my name? And I
mm.
thought,
Wow.
he was a stranger. And then another time it was a man whose wife appeared. I was giving him a shave, the open throat razors. And the stranger to me came into the salon and I was shaving him. And as I looked, I felt my energy pulse. And I looked in the
Mm,
mirror, which I'm used to doing. There was mirrors in front of me. And there's a woman behind me in a little black dress. And I turned because it was that real. She was there. It wasn't an
mm,
image. It wasn't a spirit. It was a woman. But she wasn't there. She was only in the
mm,
mirror. And she said, tell him. Without speaking, without her lips moving, she just tell him. And my heart started to really pound. The short version is that I told him. I said, there's
mm,
a lady here. I said, look, I'm a medium, sir. Now, this is crazy because I'm holding a cutthroat razor to his neck. I think he thought he
Mm.
died. I'm a medium. And I said, there's a woman here. And in my head, I said, what's your name? And I said, she just told me her name's Judy. I said, and she's in a little black dress. I described her. And then I asked her for the message. The man started to cry at this point, and she opened her hand, and there was 3 lollipops in her hand. And she just said, tell him thanks. And I said, she just
Mm.
said, thanks for the lollipops. Well, he dissolved into tears. He was a great big guy as well, and his body was gyrating. And I didn't know what to do. He's a stranger. Do I hug this man? What do I? And eventually I hugged him and held him. And he told me Judy was his wife who died 6 months earlier. And the day
Mm.
before he was in my salon, he'd gone to the grave with his boy who was 7, who asked if we could take lollipops to his mum instead of flowers. So what that told him, Jacob, was that
Oh.
his mother could see him grow up. And it was something the gentleman told me. He'd asked, will his mother ever see him grow up? So he said,
Mm.
you've just gave me confirmation that my wife can see my boy. I was so moved. I think it's one of the nicest things. There's a whole long story to that. There really
Mm.
is a long story to that, where Tina Turner was involved in that. It really
Wow.
was. Yeah, the whole thing goes on and on and on. I was supposed to see Tina that night in concert, not personally, and I missed it because I had to do the spiritual reading thing that I ended up doing. And some years later, I got to meet the lady in
Mm.
Switzerland, and she, because I told her I missed the concert, she sang for me, and I thought, the
Wow.
spirit world are amazing. So
Mm.
I actually got a private concert with Tina Turner because I did a good deed. So it was wonderful. So
Mm.
she was simply the best.
Better than all the rest. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah,
Well, wow, wow. It, I'm sure it's remarkable for you to see the transformation that comes in front of your eyes, that, goes in these things. I mean, we had a family friend that, was, had a tragic passing, and one of her kids was, a doctor, and they were just refusing to go back to work until they knew that their mother was okay.
yeah,
They got a reading point after point after point, and yes, obviously they're going through their grief, but now they're able to function, with
yeah.
their grief to a degree, and go back to their lives with hopefully meaning and a sense of connection. What is that like for you when someone, particularly, let's say, from like a parent who's lost a child, or,
Yeah.
one of these stories has come to you? What is it like for you just to see that unfold in front of your eyes, where they walked into you a certain way
Mm.
and and they left something behind, and they took something with them, from that
Well,
interaction?
I think, I mean, in more recent days, working with helping parents heal, I've seen that a lot, and especially with the fathers, because I do a lot of work with helping fathers heal.
Mm.
Which I began in a bar in the hotel 2 years ago, and there was a young man very angry, and he ended up talking to me, and he was so angry, and I gave him a reading there and then, and it just changed his life. And his wife came the next day and said, "What did you do to my husband?" She said, "I've got my husband back." So things like that really that's your reward. You know,
Mm.
I do all of this stuff, Jacob, and in my life as I do it, and I see that wonderful, complete transformation of somebody
Mm.
who goes, "What?" Because it's shocking to them sometimes. I mean, one of the men in the place, I actually called him out by his name. I'd never met the man, and I said, "Your name is so and so, so and so. Your daughter died on a road between this and that, and she lives by Lake such and such." I can't give the information, but everybody, and the man just sat and looked. And at the end, his wife came up and said, "Oh my God, my husband's back." So for
Mm.
me, the reward for what I do comes in my everyday life. Do you know what? Karma's such
Mm.
a beautiful thing if you respect it. And for me to do a good deed for someone else, you actually do a good deed for yourself. So their transformation is my transformation. And
Mm.
it just goes on like that. There is no greater reward than to heal the heart of somebody whose heart is breaking.
Mm.
That, honestly, Jacob, is, for me, that's gold. That's my
Mm.
goal.
Yeah, it's not just a talking point, it's reality that these messages could literally totally alter the trajectory of one's life, instead of holding on to a
Absolutely.
life of decades of that resentment, that bitterness, that deep grief. They can now, through a sense of belief, work with their grief,
Yeah.
as we say, and that box of that loved one isn't underground, but it is surrounding them. And they're able to have evidential proof they're complete strangers to you. You don't know them, but you do in a way,
Yeah.
and it's profound. The spirit
Well,
world, knows them.
I have
Yeah.
the strangest phenomena that happens to me, and it's happened throughout my entire life, that every message I give, I've never forgotten the spirit's name. And there's tens,
Wow.
maybe even hundreds of thousands. And the moment someone says, "You remember you gave a message to a lady with red hair, da da da," and I say, "Oh, you mean Holly's mother?" Yeah. The spirit
Mm,
has stayed somewhere. And for me, that's because the way I look at it is not a human way. It's not Gordon Smith, a person doing this. For me, it's a mind. You
mm,
are part of mind. So for me, my mind is like a hard drive of a
mm.
computer, and nothing's ever lost. And these things can actually be accessed the way you would access something from your hard drive. And for me, your hard drive is connected to the World Wide Web or the Akashic Records or whatever you want to call it. So if that's for me how it all works. I'm sure I came up with the iCloud long before Apple.
You should get a percentage of it at least.
I really should.
Well, that's profound because I mean, this, is like a bit of like a segue to my next topic. But,
Mm,
much like yourself, I was very connected as a young child, had an NDE at just the age of 3 years old that I
mm,
profoundly remember. And I'm asked, frequently, how do I remember that? And yes, certainly as a therapist, I could point to intense trauma,
yeah.
which you could either have a dissociative component or clear recollection. But as you're saying, beyond that, when you're connecting to the spirit realm, it
Yeah.
goes beyond just our conventional memory. Like I'm sure if I'd ask you what you're doing like last year, this week, you'd forget, but like something from the
Yes.
spirit realm 10, 15 years ago that you connect
Uh,
to, you remember. Does it work differently, would you say, regarding memory of things that happen in this reality and when we connect to things on the other side and how we're able to, just like evoke those memories?
Absolutely, Jacob. One of the things I try to explain to people is from its simplest experience, like a dream. I dream my father's here, but it's more than a dream. There's a quality to it. Is it a dream? Did my father really visit me? The reason you know is because it stays. It
Mm,
almost stains your aura, your
mm,
mind, and it never goes away. You can remember it 10 years from now exactly as it happened. So
yeah.
with your near-death experience, that is a mind affecting thing. It's not your brain that
Mm,
stores that memory, that is stored in your mind. So
mhm,
it's living. It's not a memory that's folded away in a
mhm,
file in your brain. It's a living memory that you can access and bring it to life again. And it
mhm,
doesn't matter that you were three. 3-year-olds have a mind. They may not be open to everything, but they will still get the sensation of what the
mhm.
experience was. And in your case, that's a profound experience that never will go out of your mind. And it was
No.
obviously meant in the sense when you look at the path of your life to bring you to where you are now, and knowing that there's something beyond death actually helps you heal people in this world.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
knowing is better. Experiencing something like that is better than all the books of knowledge
Mm.
because it's
Oh,
real.
yeah.
There's a
Yeah.
reality within a reality or out with a reality even, which
Mm.
is absolutely phenomenal. I love it.
Oh, well, thank you for the point of validation. And I'm sure
Mm,
for many listeners, just to understand, like as you highlighted that dichotomy of the brain and the mind,
mm,
and certainly mediumship, near-death experiences really give a lot of credible evidence that there is a difference
yeah,
between the brain and the mind. They're not, the brain does not create the mind, and NDEs, mediumship usually have probably a lower level of brainwave activity, and yet awareness is profound. So it just highlights the similar theme that, our brains just are filters.
but when we practice to meditate, and what we're doing in reality is expanding our awareness, our consciousness. So the consciousness is then allowed to have a freedom away from the body in that
Mm,
state, that altered state. So it's in that you start to wake up. Your consciousness wakes up. Now, in a meditation session, if I was sitting outside, I would all of a sudden know how many leaves were on a tree.
mm,
I've no idea, and I've no interest in even knowing that. But there's a moment when your awareness becomes super conscious
mm,
and it can actually read nature. And what it does for me, it makes me smile, and it's like a happy inner warmth that comes up just to be connected with nature like that in that profound way. But then it also shows me that I am a living being out with this body. When this body goes to sleep at night, that's the brain closing down the body, closing down the organs, letting them repair, do all the stuff, waking it back up, bringing it back down every 90 minutes, I think it is, every hour and a half. The brain does that through sleep. But the consciousness actually gets a chance to be free of the body in deep sleep. And each person does that. A lot of people are afraid to meditate too deeply in case they don't get back into their body. Well, they must lose these fears, because that was never going to happen. You know, I've had thousands of students through the years. We haven't lost one yet. But people, it's that attachment we have to this body that keeps us too grounded. So when we realize that this body is something I'm passing through, it's not me. It's a manifestation of of everything I've been before. So when you look at that, you can also see your whole karmic bank balance in this being that you are now. And if you want to improve it, then that's the great thing. You think, you know, I can improve this. I can improve the being next time round. I can improve everything because I actually am aware of what I am. I'm a spirit or a consciousness that is walking through this world with a manifested body that allows him to be here. This is my spacesuit. Only earth suit, we'll call it. This is my earth suit. It gets me places in this world. It keeps me in this world until I no longer need it. I'll go home, back to where I came from.
Yeah. I love it. You know, I don't think anyone's necessarily per se immunized from grief.
No.
But as we're saying before, you know, when belief factors into grief, you could work through it, you know, and I've seen timelines change. But from what you're saying, it also seems like if you see yourself as a body, it's logical to really be in a deep state of distress and grief when that loved one next to you is buried, because that's all you think that there is. And not only once you connect to pieces of evidence, but when you're able to see yourself as a soul, so too, you could also see your loved ones as that. And the body wasn't all their entirety.
That's one of the things I like to try and teach grieving people, is that their grief honors the death of a loved one. When we see grief as sadness, grief is a reaction to love. And it was the Queen of England, the Queen of Britain, before she died, she said, grief is the price we pay for love. And it's actually true. It's not a punishment, but it's actually a mark of respect of the love that you had for someone. So when that person passes from the body and somebody has become so attached to the body, they want the body back all the time. I need to hold them. I need to. My job is to teach people a new way of visiting their dead child who is actually living. So I'm giving them tools, if you like, to let their child in their new home visit them, or they visit them. And that can be done the moment we see what grief is. Grief isn't depression. It's a very different thing. Grief is a reaction. And it's a healthy reaction to death. It has to happen. So how long you hold on to grief is then down to the person, the individual. Do you know, when both my parents have gone now, and I was with my father when he passed, and I can honestly say I had absolutely no grief whatsoever, because I felt him leave his body, and I smiled, and it was the craziest reaction, is to actually smile when your father dies. But it was this, he's free. It was just a wow. It really was. He died a natural death as an older man. So that's how we expect our parents to die. I think there's a different grief reaction when somebody's life is taken, or somebody's life ends very abruptly without goodbyes and all the stuff. And as a medium, I'm also a sensitive, and you become sensitive to the grief. So if you sit with a couple and their child was murdered, their grief is very different from somebody whose elderly mother passed to the spirit world in her sleep. The actual grief, reaction of grief, as a medium and as sensitive, I feel it. And often I feel the emotions that build on top of the grief, like anger, hatred, jealousies, all the different multi-layered things that happen. And therefore, as a medium, my job is to try to allow them just to experience the grief without overlaying all the emotions on it, because then grief gets lost in emotion. And it's
Mm,
actually it's a reaction. It needs to come out. And
mm,
therefore, sometimes the message from a medium shocks them. One father that I read for whose boy was actually stabbed to death, a horrific scene. And there was one thing I said to the man was, your son's here. He was Italian. And I said, his name is Roberto. I said, and he doesn't want you to hold on to his death. He said, because you are holding on to his death. And I said, and to prove he's here, he tells me you buried his ashes in the Juventus football ground, the soccer ground in Italy. And the man he burst into tears and he cried for it must have been at least half an hour. And
mm,
he had been holding that grief under hatred, anger, deep-seated
mm,
anger, and the grief couldn't get out. So that little message allowed the grief to burst through the anger, the rage, all the things he felt at the person who took his son's life.
mm,
Natural to do that, but the grief needed to be free. Then he could
mm,
work on the emotions that were left. And it was one of the most, well, I'd say beautiful scenes for me, because to see the grief actually realized properly was the
mm.
biggest healing that man could have received in that moment.
Yeah. I love that. Well, it's very congruent with what you're saying with the soul, how we really, in order to expand, we need to let go,
Yeah.
which is very countercultural. We're taught like, regurgitate, build more muscle, hold on to things. That's how things grow.
Yeah.
But the spirit realm is paradoxical, where it's really about the more you let go, the more you can grow. And, for people who are really going through heavy emotions, I say, like, when you have to go to the bathroom, you just hold it in. No, you go. And the same thing emotionally. The emotions need to be in motion. They need to, be in flow. So that's a great gift that father is able to receive, where he stopped maybe getting in their own way. Because we've had thousands of generations have passed before us, and it's nothing new towards our DNA towards loss. And we really, biologically, psychologically, innately know how to process things. We just have to allow ourselves to be, in flow with those, natural unfoldments. So it's a great gift that you gave to that man.
Jacob, we look at death in this world because we are very much lacking in the understanding of the transformation we call death. Do you imagine what it feels like for somebody who's struggling in a body here, whose body's in pain, like my father's was actually, crippled and in pain and agony, couldn't breathe, this confinement. So
Mm,
imagine for a moment what that feels like, the moment the breath you take that actually allows you to expand in light. Your
mm,
light body just goes, wow. And there's a joy that we cannot put into words. It's just this release, this liberation from this confinement. So when we cry for the spirit world, we shouldn't, because they are free. And this is why they want to come back to tell their parents, their husbands, their wives, I'm okay. I'm better
mm,
than okay. And they want to come back to heal the grief, or to help the
mm,
grief to move on. Because
mm,
that is a process. You must grieve and then move on. Mediums cannot take grief away. And neither should we, even if we had that at our disposal. It's not our job. Our job is to allow people to move on, so that
mm,
they live with the passing of a loved one, but they actually grow from it as well. They take from it the life that they shared, the love that they felt, which is causing their grief. And then that becomes something that you honor in memory. Memory is the healer of grief. When we can go into our memory bank or walk down memory lane, we can pick these golden moments. They are the jewels of the mind. And if we can give ourselves the right to look at those jewels of the mind, I loved my mother because, I loved my father, I
mm,
remember, these things actually warm our heart. And grief is like cold inside us. It's like an ice crystal. So therefore, when we actually start to bring the warmth back to ourselves, I work with the elements because I'm Buddhist. So for me, it's bringing fire back into the being
mm.
and melting the ice, which is grief. So
Wow.
that then dissipates through time. It starts to warm and we become warm again, and the cold within us starts to normalize. So we
Right.
never forget, we honor the love and the life that we've had with them, but we actually grow from it. We really do
Mm.
grow from it. It's the most powerful experience to grow through losing a loved one. It really is.
Yeah, and you look at, helping parents heal, for instance,
Mm.
like how many people, are now mediums who had like nothing to like do with the afterlife
Yeah.
community. They're just kind of living their regular lives. And it works similar to an NDE in a sense, like there's this big shakeup of your soul where now you're forced to potentially reevaluate things, just look at things in a different way. And you just see this incredible, it was funny that I was in Phoenix, Arizona, but it's just this
Yeah.
Phoenix out of the ashes, this death
Yeah.
from this rebirth from death period. So it is fascinating. I had like a client of mine 2 weeks ago who brought up like an interesting point that, I'm curious to kind of pick your mind on this.
Sure.
She, obviously we go through grief, our loved ones are fine, but do our loved ones, feel our sadness? Do they get sad when we're sad over here, or is there just joy over there, no emotions, no sadness on the other side?
There's no emotion. Emotion is tied to our human elements. All the elements we have, earth, our body, fire, water, and air. This is where the emotions come from. So the emotions, of water are actually anger. A lot of people think fire element is anger. It's not. So these are all attached to us. Water, deep water. Imagine how cold that is. That's anger.
Mm,
My mother was a raging person. She used to rage. She was fire. So that's a
mm,
fiery thing when you rage at somebody and explode,
mm,
but you don't hold any resentment. That's water. You take it deep into yourself.
mm,
When you learn the elements, you learn the emotions. So when we die, if you imagine this, if we quickly do it, like when you're born, you're in space, you're in
mm,
consciousness, it's space. You are alerted to your parents at conception through thought. Their thought of conception is what wakes you up. Air is the next element that brings you down. So you are now coming into the air element from space to air. Fire is passion that they have between them. Water is created, and then water is the first living cell of your material self. To die is the same thing. Body death, fire and water death becomes dehydration of the body. Air is the last thing to go back to consciousness. So when you see it like that, you go back to this state of liberation, part of the universe. It's incredible. And it's simple when you actually understand it all. So, no, they don't feel that. They do get a sense of how we're feeling, but it
mm,
doesn't bring them down. A lot of people say, but will my mother know that I'm missing her? And does she feel sad that I'm sad? No,
mm,
she's trying to get to you so that she can help you to
mm,
grieve properly and move on. The term life after death to me is more important for the people in this world. There is a life after death. When you lose a loved one, you don't die because of it. You keep yourself alive and honor them. It really is a strong message. This is where we must use life after death. There's already one on the other side, which is free and happy. We need to try and make people understand that it's a natural thing to die. Death is not the opposite of life. It is part of it. And
mm.
when we can talk about it and be open about it, we're all going to die. My spirit guide once told somebody when I was doing a trance session, you know, dying is easy. Everyone can do it. It's living in this world that's the hard thing.
Wow. And your work, I'm sure, not only finds life after death, but life after their death, so that's beautiful. And I mean, for listeners, watching this and from conducting your readings, I'll scale back. I had a grandfather, I'll give an example, who never believed in the afterlife, but said, and I look exactly like him. I'm not asking for a free reading here, but I do look like him. I do think I'm better looking than he was, but that's another issue. But he said, I lived through you. I don't believe in the afterlife, but a part of me is in you.
Yeah.
But for people who may or may not believe in, the afterlife, what's the most effective way, do you feel, of keeping that loved one as a part of this reality, this life? What do our loved ones want to do with their lives to incorporate it into ours?
Well, I believe that if we remember them and we share stories of their lives, we animate them. We give them an animation of their life that they had here.
Mhm.
So it would be, say, for my granddaughter, I have a little granddaughter. So for her, I'll talk to her about my parents, whom she never knew. She was a baby. So to keep my mother alive in her eyes, so that she is a reality of some sort to me. So, and that honors my mother. I often allow my mind to say, Mum, come here when she's here and let me feel you so that I know that you can see her, and things like that. But memories really are a gift for us.
Mm.
Not every living species has recall like we do.
Mm.
So using your memories to reanimate the life and the love that you had with somebody, they feel that. They immediately get drawn to that. You know, when people shut down, and a lot of people, when they have a loss, don't remember things. It's almost like their mind stops giving memories. And some
Mm.
people say, I can't even remember what she looked like. I can't see her face in my mind. And it's because that is part of the grief. People are afraid sometimes to look at their memories, a bit like a videotape. I think they feel if they look at the memory too often, it will fade away or it will wear out, when that's not true. Those memories are the jewels of your mind. I've said it before. These are the things that heal you, but they also keep you connected to your loved one in the spirit world.
So true. I had my best friend crossed over, and I was crying, like a couple weeks ago. And I was just really feeling him. And his message was those moments were real. What we had together, every moment was real. It's eternal.
Yeah.
And I made a post about it just because for me, that's how I process things is if
Yeah,
I get something, I like to give it over to inspire other people.
absolutely.
What you're saying is so real, though. It's not just frivolous. It doesn't just wash away at the shore. What you had, the love you experienced, the moments, those are real and eternal. Is that correct? Would you say?
100%, Jacob, because even for me, and I have times when I work on myself, and there's moments where I allow myself to go into the deeper departments of my mind and look at some of the older memory stuff and
Mhm.
think, wow, oh, wow, look what I was like then. Look at this. But the reality of it in that altered state, there's a reality to it. And you see that even a memory is real.
Mm.
It's not a full lead away thing that didn't happen, or even because it comes into your imagination doesn't make it unreal.
Mhm.
It's a
Yeah.
memory. There's a living reality to certain memories that can touch you. If
Yeah.
you go back, say 2 years ago with your friend, and the two of you standing together, laughing, looking out to the ocean or something like that, then all of a sudden, it's not just what you said to each other or things like that. There's a memory of the friendship feeling
Mhm.
between the space between the two of you is filled with your energy and his energy becoming one.
Mhm.
And that's part of the memory, a living memory. You go, oh my God. And then it makes you emotional because you think,
Yeah.
oh my God, yeah, I remember that. That was a beautiful memory, a beautiful
Mhm.
moment. And here's one way to look at it. Sensitive people sometimes walk into a building and say, oh, I feel something terrible in here.
Mhm.
Something terrible may have happened. So there's no spirit that's stuck or
Mhm.
anything like that. That would simply be residual emotional leftover.
Mhm.
So what the sensitive's feeling, oh, and because it was a strong emotion. So if it was a
Mhm.
death or something angry, they feel that, and that's what scares people. It's not
Mhm.
that there's some spirits don't do that, but people get in touch with the actual residual energy that's in the fabric of the building. It's not
Mhm.
a spirit, that's a memory. So if people can sense memories from hundreds of years ago, what does that tell us about memory? Memory
Mm.
itself has a life, has an energy, has a force.
It takes away the time-space conundrum that we create and just says, "Hey, what you had is eternal. Was it in the past?" So fascinating. I love that we're emphasizing this stuff. The first time I really pointed a picture, but to really understand, in a way, memories are the undeniable imprints that our loved ones existed.
Definitely.
And so the lives that we live should be a reflection of that, the undeniable imprint that they were here and are here. I just wanted to switch gears. It's something that like perked my own curiosity
Mm,
where, if sometimes I'm noticing different mediums work differently. Like sometimes there's mediums with more of that cop personality. They're very like matter of fact and factual, and sometimes it could be a little bit contesty with things, kind of the know-it-all. But they almost some of those types of mediums seem to give like an autopsy report and
Yeah.
fixate on how the loved one died. And then I noticed some mediums who are more of this. I think we're all spiritual, but at least they're really connected. They
Yeah.
focused on how they lived and the memories at hand. Why is it that some mediums just get like certain particular angles of messages and not the full spectrum of the meaning and the pieces of evidence? It's interesting how I've
Well,
noticed, just an observation that I've
it
noticed.
would be a bit like different therapists would use different methodology to heal
Mm,
clients. Some mediums are very good with medical things. The
mm,
one thing I will say to that is that most people will understand the death of someone
mm,
because that was the last thing they experienced.
sure.
Most spirits who come through will emphasize, I died of this, or the medium is, oh, this person actually had an illness, I feel very sick, or it can be, oh, died of a heart attack, a
Mm,
gunshot, whatever. So that may come into it, but you're right. It's the medium is just the voice here. Mediums are
mm,
not that important, and I say that as a medium. As a medium, I open my. Here's the thing. I was teaching a young American medium this the other week. I
mm,
said, don't become a medium, become the
mm,
spirit world. So for me, I become the spirit world and I allow spirit to take over the message. So though they're using my voice, they're with me. So
mm,
they conduct the narrative of the message. And often I speak as them because
mm,
it's easier for me to get out the way. Gordon Smith's not important, but the energy that he opens up is very important to people. So
mm,
therefore, that's what I become, the spirit world. And the living memories sometimes take people away from the harrowing death. And
mm,
that's a prime example when there's been a brutal death. And
mm,
the people of, if it's parents, that's all they see for the next
mm,
10 years of their life. They are just holding that death in their head.
mm,
The medium can take them back to, do you remember when your daughter was 4 and you bought her this? All
mm,
of a sudden, memory streams are opening up again. So
mm,
it's important for the medium or the spirit, I would say, to use the medium in a way to tap into things that are going to be healing. And
mm,
most times it's memories that they'll tap into. You remember you bought her this when she was 16. Oh my
mm,
God, I did. I'd forgotten that. And we also give the people permission to go into the memory box and
mm,
take out the best ones and live with them again. We give them permission to see the child alive.
mm,
Equally, them knowing through good evidence from the medium, from spirit world through the medium, from good evidence, gives them the sense, my kid's still alive. So that
mm.
takes them beyond the brutal death. Now she's in heaven, and all I need is a telephone to heaven, and I can talk to her. And that would be
Right.
a medium.
Yeah, and it also expands the umbrella of how they're able to remember their loved ones. And we do this in religion too. I mean, for instance, Christianity has a big fixation on how Jesus died. There's not enough of an emphasis on the teachings or how
Oh, I love
Jesus
that.
might have lived. So I think it like again, beliefs are so pivotal in behavior. And we're really programmed in a way to like look at the very end of things and not the full spectrum of life. And that's a gift that you're able to give those clients, is just to really widen that umbrella of their connectivity with their loved ones beyond just those last final moments.
Well, we must. Part of our journey, though I'm a medium, it's a small facet of what I am. Um, I'm on a journey of expansion. So I have to broaden my mental horizons, but equally, I have to broaden my understanding of consciousness and
Mhm,
allow that to be. I don't order it. I don't contain it. I can't do any of these things. I allow it. That's all we can do. And by allowing ourselves the opportunity to grow and expand, the world becomes a different place. You're no
mhm,
longer living in a confined space. You're no longer a part of a small thing. You actually realize by expansion you're part of something so much bigger. Who was it? I think it was Marianne Williamson who once said, our deepest fear is not that we are insignificant. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. And that is so true, Jacob, because with that knowledge comes responsibility.
great power, great responsibility. I forget,
Mm.
wasn't that like Spider-Man? I forget what was one of the Marvel characters who might have, but it's so true. Yeah, which is like a chapter in my book called Our Superpowers, where how
Yeah.
we have a fixation in many ways on Marvel characters or superheroes as being outside of ourselves. But in reality, yes, we're a lot smaller than what we think, but also we have a lot more potential. There's a duality,
Yeah.
going on that, it's important to be humble, but also not to forget who you are, what you're connected to, and how beautiful of a being you
Yeah.
are. So I
Ah.
absolutely love that. Right now, you know, life has subjectivity, I'm sure, with each soul
Mm. Yeah.
in their experience. But certainly we're going through a lot, obviously these last couple years and being in the States, the
Yeah.
embers are pretty hot, it's pretty intense. It can be, there's a lot of fire. And I love, obviously, you mentioned the fire elements because
Yeah.
that's something that I've connected to as a young child. And we speak
Yeah.
about it in our own English language, like that person's a hothead. Well, why are you saying that? Why does the word hot come to mind? Really, the
Absolutely.
fire up and the water is down, or that person is cool headed, the water is up. So I
Yeah.
love that you place. That's the first time I've heard a guest emphasize the elements. So
Oh, yeah.
power to you. But objectively, do you get a sense of what this task is as a collective from the spirit realm for this moment in time? And obviously, there's individual tasks at hand, but what do you feel is like the
Yeah.
the chessboard move for humanity at this time? What are we facing, and what does the spirit realm want us to really, migrate to or
Well,
move?
I honestly look at the collective consciousness on the planet
Mm,
right now as not very evolved.
mm,
Human beings are not very evolved because it's not that long ago they did all these things on this planet and they're
mm,
doing them all again, which tells us there is no evolution there. Though we're evolving technologically and in many different ways with lifestyles and things, the evolution of our spirituality is still very, very minuscule. It's a seed, really. So what's happening is probably meant to happen as it is happening now, but things will come from it. There will be spiritual aftermath. There really will, because people are just being people and doing what people can do. And we are actually, people need to understand this. This is not a heaven realm we're in. This is more of a hell realm. We
mm,
come here to experience the hardships. That's the reason we come here. So this is a hard experience being human. There is not a realm beneath it. This is the lowest realm of spirit you can find. There isn't a
mm,
hell. It's experienced in this world. Heaven and hell are both an experience we can have in this particular world. So actually, we are just going about our business as we should. This is what it is. People are not that evolved spiritually en masse. So you will have shining lights that stand out, Jacob, and thankfully these shining lights are holding the space for new life to come into the planet. If we could only improve our spirituality the way we've improved technology, and it
mm,
will happen, it will
mm,
happen. It's just at the moment, people are just so addicted to materialism. It's
mm.
crazy. They want power, they want this, they want money, they want land, they want. It's like, stop it. You can't own the land.
Mm,
Nobody can. You can't own the air that you breathe. You can't own it. You can't own space. So
right.
stop trying to own and learn that we're in a world where we borrow, that we move through a life of borrowed things and then we let it all go when we leave it. So there's
Yeah.
nothing you need to grab onto. Actually, it's all about letting go of it.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, it seems like the world needs like one big psychoanalysis sessions to really go back, or maybe a crucifixion. I don't know, but it seems like, a lot of it is the work that I do individually. Obviously, to change, you need to go to the point of origin of pathology of behaviors, and move past it. And as a collective Earth, where, in 2024, but a lot of the stuff from thousands of years ago are regurgitated in this time with
Absolutely.
Wi-Fi and with technology. So
Yeah,
it's like, we've evolved technologically a lot faster than spirituality
we
and
have.
spiritually, and that's a concern.
In the words of Burt Bacharach, what the world needs now is love, sweet love.
Mm.
But
I
that's okay. Do you know what? The thing about it is we cannot. fix the entire world, but we can fix our world. And that was the way the spirit world gave it to me when I was addressing a group. When somebody said, Gordon, how can we fix, the planet? And I said, well, you personally cannot. Neither can I. But we can fix our world. And the more of us who do that, the world will start to educate. If everybody understood that a bad action causes a bad action to yourself, you can't hurt another soul without hurting your soul. When people truly know that, consciousness will ripen and become more evolved. But it will not do that until people realize that bad actions actually begat other bad actions. And that's what it really is. People don't mean to be bad. Nobody's born bad. It's the actions they make, the karma. I mean, that's all it means. Their karma is actually not good. And that's actually going to remain like that until they do an act of kindness. And one act of kindness can undo the wars of this world. Just one.
Right. Well, I think people need to stop seeing life as separate from themselves.
Yeah.
Or outside.
Yes.
Like I'm asked a lot, heaven on earth, is heaven a destination? Is that an embodiment? Is that a possibility to do? Or is heaven something we have to wait to when we cross over on the other side? Is it possible to bring that to a degree over here? Or is that something we have to wait towards?
Well, I think that what we can experience here are things like deep-seated happiness within us, that you do actually have a joy. A lack of fear certainly helps us to create a heaven within this life. Fear, if you can get rid of fear, you're living in joy and happiness. You really are. It's a wonderful thing not to be afraid. Heaven itself, I don't think exists. I'll be really honest. I don't think there's a heaven. I think there's states of mind that we go through. There'll be joyous, loving experiences, expansion and such things. But I think heavens are man-made by the sounds of it, because they sound like really lovely places we all want to go. I mean, a British heaven would probably be Kensington in London with white stucco-fronted buildings and very fabulous things. That's not heaven. That's material heaven. Heaven is freedom. Heaven is release. I think put best by the wonderful bard, to be or not to be, that is the question. Even to remain in a heaven is giving you attachment to something. Having no attachment to a heaven, make this heaven. I'll be really honest with you, Jacob. I thank whoever in the universe, because every day I experience at least one bit of heaven. And that's because I'm open to it. I really do. It's like, wow. Do you know, even today it was sitting with my dogs and I was doing a water meditation. I have water runs by my house and I was giving an offering to the water and with my dogs. And all of a sudden I just felt, wow, isn't this beautiful? Now that's all you need. Sometimes when people crave a heaven or have an idea of it, it usually disappoints. Heavens are very disappointing, yes.
Yeah.
Heaven is now. It really is. Heaven is now.
So in other words, how we live here carries over to when we cross, you would say.
Absolutely. This is heaven. This is the spirit world. It's just a very dense level of it. We really are in motion. I mean, in Buddhism, we'll call it the bardo, which is, some people would say, the book of the death, but it's not. The bardo is a change. You're moving. This is a physical bardo we're in. And then when we leave it, we go into a light bardo. So you're getting into a different phase of living. You're just going into your light being, your light body. And that will take you then into what some people would say heaven realms. It just means freedom realms. I mean, heaven isn't a place. It's a place in the Bible and other holy books, but it's not. It really isn't. I mean, if you were to find God, you would actually find yourself. You would see your face. So,
So I guess don't go on your GPS and type in heaven. You have to kind of do it internally, right?
Yeah, well, I actually sometimes just see that as Scotland where I live, because it is heaven.
There you go.
We call it God's country, and it really is. If I walk in the Highlands where I live near here, and somebody once said to me, "Do you go to church?" And I said, "Well, I think this is church, isn't it? The mountains,
it's a lot bigger and broader.
The oceans, it's beautiful." And I think if God isn't here, where is he? If you
Yeah.
believe in God, if he's not here, where is he? This is God's country. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's easy to make yourself contented. It really is. By learning not to overcrowd your mind with thinking. Now, there's the air element. Too much thinking. That's
Mm.
air. And then it becomes completely turbulent. And then it becomes emotion, and it starts to become anxiety. And anxiety can become fear, and then fear goes into all sorts of realms. And it all starts maybe with one thought, over processing. These
Mm.
cycles of thoughts that don't go away. Now you need to, this is when people need to ground themselves and touch the earth, touch the ground. When the mind is going round and round and round like that with the air element, touch the ground and just let it go. Breathe and let it go.
As Carol King said, you got to feel the earth move under your feet, right?
You're not that old enough to remember Tapestry.
I know she had the beautiful cat in the cover and everything.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
yeah,
it's one of my
we love
albums. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that song. So Far Away is a great song, but it's not so congruent with spirituality. They're not far away.
No,
So,
no.
uh,
Great song
yeah,
though.
great
Wow, you're
song.
too young to
Love
know
the
who
ending.
Carol King is, Jacob. Far too young.
I grew up with all that, but yeah, well, so for you, the secret between the two worlds, or living between the two worlds, is living an expanded, connected life, and really focusing this as like the great canvas of God, and not, trying to wait for it, but really opening up, being aware of it, being the observer of the beauty that, being a beauty seeker. My last question is, how do you feel one connects to the divine or spirituality? I'm kind of curious because there's a lot of different paths. There's subjectivity, but for if you were to describe like a person, like how do they expand their energy? Is it strictly subjective, or is there an objective like pathway to that incorporates subjectivity to it too?
Well, for me, it would be karma and simplicity. So
Mm,
live as simple a life as you can. Live within the boundary where you are and what you've got, and appreciate the life that you live in, because that stops your mind craving. So when you start
mm,
to crave things, you're unhappy because you're
mm,
craving. And so, no, live within a life that suits and that makes you feel good.
mm,
Being kind to anyone or anything, a small act of kindness is like a light in the world. It really is. It's like a beacon of light. So being kind, and that also means to yourself, being kind to all sentient beings
mm,
is really the mastery of that. The divine shouldn't be seen as some great all-accomplishing thing. The divine is a spark within you. And people keep looking out for it. They just need to start looking in and see where it is within them. That's what I would say. And whenever you're in doubt, try and help someone. And it's not big gestures, it's the little true, pure gestures that actually improve your karma and therefore make your divine light shine just that little bit brighter. People will
mm,
notice it. Honestly, people notice when there's a light shining around somebody. They are drawn to it because they want to feel that light of
mm,
that diamond. It really is. I mean, when you think our consciousness really is like an uncut diamond, and with every physical life we live, we shape another facet into it. And that comes from all the knocks that we take in every physical life, which is why
mm,
it's okay to suffer in this world. It's okay. Suffering shapes you. And at some point, that diamond will become a completely pure cut crystal, and it will
mm.
shine with the greatest luster and sheen you can imagine if you have a clear conscience and an element of kindness within you. You'll
Wow.
shine like a diamond.
Rihanna. Yeah, that's more modern day. But yeah,
That's for
diamonds.
you. You've got Carol King and I've got Rihanna.
It reminds me of Michelangelo, who's someone that says to like, how do you have your sculptures? And he says, I don't do anything. I just chip away at the masterpiece that's always been there. So yeah, life is a way of like chipping away diamonds made under pressure. And like Maya Angelou would say, people will forget, what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. So true. Yeah,
One of my favorite philosophers, Maya Angelou.
yeah. Well, right. You're one of my favorite people too. I know for you subjectively, you don't make a big deal, but we didn't even get into your artwork and all the other things. It's impossible to cover from my perspective. I know you're a humble man, but the work of the broad work of Gordon Smith, but we'll have to have you back here
Oh,
whenever you
absolutely.
can. Gordon, my brother, any ways that people could get in touch with you, following your work, anything's down the
No,
pipeline? I mean, you've done enough. You've written, what is it, 23 books, and
yeah.
just remark that, like, you pop these things out like candy. It's amazing. I've written two, and I'm like, that's enough. But
I mean, again, I tend not to sort of advertise a lot of things. But on my website, I can't even remember my website, www.gordonsmithmedium.com.
just search Gordon
I
Smith.
think,
You'll
I
find
don't
it.
know. But and again, I used to work with all these spiritual people who would sell their books. I could never do that because I was too busy giving messages from the other side to actually promote a book. So I'm really hopeless at I'm bad at self-promotion, but I think my website is called Gordon Smith Medium, I think, .com or something like that. But yeah, and I do some things these days, online teachings, demonstrations and that. But in all honesty, my message to everybody watching is be your own medium. Find the spirit within you that actually has access to this incredible network of living beings who just want to come and help and heal you. If you do it through me or through any other means, you'll make a better person of yourself and a better life for you and the people you love. Simple.
Stop living your life small. Become your own medium. Your life will become a lot larger, right? How's that?
Absolutely.
And I'm feeling extra large from Thanksgiving, but that's another story. Anyway,
Oh, goodness.
yeah. Well, Gordon Smith, my brother, thank you so much. My heart feels warm, my mind feels clear, and I know so many took so many gems from this conversation. You're welcome back at any point in time, and
I'd
I
love
look
to.
forward to following your work. And certainly, I don't have my pom poms or my cheerleading skirt on, but if I did, I would do that for you because you're incredible. So thank you for all
Well,
your work.
I thank you. You gorgeous, gorgeous young man. If somebody said, "What does an angel look like?" I'd say Jacob.
Oh God. To counter that, I would say talk to my family. They may answer differently.
Yeah, mine's
that's
would
that's
too, Jacob.
that's Ram Dass. He says, "You think you're good? Just ask your
Rum.
family." But anyway, but thank you so much. We'll
Pleasure.
have you. You'll have to come back soon.
Anytime.
And well, that was a wonderful conversation. I loved every word that Gordon had to share, and I know so many of you did too. Please continue to stay posted to interviews coming your way. Hit that subscribe button and also give us a follow on mindbodyspirit.fm to stay connected. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you here next time on the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder.